The NHL just blessed the Avalanche as the season schedule for all 32 teams in the National Hockey League for the 25-26 season has officially been released, and some of the aspects of the Avs schedule is going to help them propel very strongly this season in the Central Division and hopefully secure themselves a strong seed in the Stanley Cup playoffs next season. We're going to break down everything surrounding the recent schedule release for the Colorado Avalanche, the aspects of it that are worth noting, as well as some of the specific games and the times of those games that are going to be crucial for the standings at the end of the season. Welcome into Avalanche Digest, everybody. Mark Robinson, so happy to be with you here today, breaking down the Avs schedule, and just as always, talking all things Avs hockey here on Avs Digest. Before we dive into the schedule release, just a few quick things I want to go over. First and foremost, make sure that you guys are subscribed to the channel. If you are not subscribed, please exit out of the video, hammer that subscribe button real quick, takes 5 seconds. 85% of our viewers on a daily basis are not subscribed to the channel, in comparison to 15% of you that are subscribed. As always, thank you to that 15%. We're averaging 1,000 plus views on every single episode here on Avs Digest. That means that 85% of those 1,000 viewers are not subscribed. We're climbing in the subscriber count so fast. We're almost to 1,000. So please take the quick second. If you love hockey, if you love the Avalanche, if you're watching our videos, we appreciate the support so much. Hit that subscribe button. Another quick note, if you haven't yet, check us out on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Every single Avs Digest episode is posted to those platforms as well. It's just the audio from these episodes. So if you're on the go, if you're in a scenario or in a situation where you can't watch the screen, but you want to still listen to the takes that we have and listen to what we're talking about here on the channel, make sure you check us out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That is where you can listen to all the content that we're producing here at Avs Digest. As always, thank you guys so much for the support. Without further ado, let's break down the 2025-26 Colorado Avalanche season schedule, which was recently released, of course, early October all the way through mid-April. The Avs will be in full action, an 82-game regular season. It is going to be an absolutely electric season for the Avs as we are getting closer and closer to October. And with that, before we dive into kind of the month by month and look at some of these games on a closer up, let's just take a look at a few of the notable aspects of the schedule as reported on by various other reporters and social media personnel in the world of Colorado Avalanche hockey. So it includes a franchise record 18-day games, which means that over the course of the season, 18 times the Avs will be having matinee games, dropping the puck early afternoon. That surpasses a previous high of 15 all the way back in 1998-99. So in the early days of the Colorado Avalanche. So interesting to see that they'll be having a few day games. Not that obviously has massive implications. The outcomes of the games probably won't be affected by the time of day, but still notable that a lot of, some of the games that will be played are going to be a little bit earlier in the day. There's a 20-day break for the 2026 Winter Olympics in February. Now, obviously, this applies for every single team. Every team's going to get that break. And then, another aspect that's notable is, the two sides of what this break will look like. For the Avs, you've got, players like Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, potentially, Gabe Landeskog, Devon Taves, just a few names that you will probably, obviously MacKinnon and Makar, 100%, they've already been named to the roster officially, but just a few names that you'll most likely see playing in the Olympics. So they will be representing their country, still playing hockey, still getting that activity and that experience on a day-to-day basis. That's going to be huge for them. And then you look at the other side of the break. That is a long vacation for, players on the Avs that aren't going to be representing their respective countries in the Olympics. And that break may be exactly what they need in that kind of just over the mid-season mark in order to come back and really finish that season strong and make the most optimal regular season playoff push that they can. And then a 7-game homestand in January. That is the club's longest homestand since the 2020-21 season. 7 straight games home at Ball Arena. We know how electric that barn is. It is always buzzing, a sellout crowd, over 18,000 fans every single game at Ball Arena in downtown Denver, Colorado. So to have 7 straight games there in the heart of the season, when I'm sure the standings are going to be tight, that's going to be huge to have a little bit of that home barn advantage tilt 7 straight games. So very exciting. Some very exciting aspects of the season. A few just other things to note real quick. Their third game of the season is against the Dallas Stars, which we'll dive into in a second. Obviously a team that we have had a lot of struggle with over the past, not as much in the regular season, more so in the playoffs. They've knocked us out of the playoffs 2 years in a row now. 2 years ago in the second round, last year in the first round, in a heartbreaking Game 7 comeback win by Mikko Rantanen. 3 of the 4 Jets games are within 2 weeks of one another. As we know, we play our Central Division rivals 4 times throughout the season. And so 3 of those 4 games against the former President Trophy winning Winnipeg Jets are all going to be very close to one another. That is also a team that now will have Jonathan Toews, a guy who almost signed with the Colorado Avalanche. So that's definitely notable as well. 12 total back-to-back games. 3 separate 4-game road trips, 7-game homestand in January. Like we talked about, only 1 road game in February. Obviously, thanks to that 20-day break in the Olympics, for the Olympics, that is. But to only play 1 road game, and, when we get to the, actual February calendar schedule, we'll look at, how many games are even being played during that time in general. But, February, obviously, like we've talked about, going to be a really great month for the team to kind of reconvene, reset, and rest up, or in other cases, try to bring home a medal for their country and continue to get as many reps as possible in order to improve their game. And then 5 straight games versus the Pacific Division to end the season. I like this observation from Locked On Avalanche. Definitely an interesting way to end the season. I remember the last game of the season against the Seattle Kraken, a team that I think some Avs fans are not the biggest fan of, which understandably so. And so, a lot of games against the Pacific Division, which, when it comes down to it, there may be some teams who are in wild card spots trying to fight their way into a playoff spot at the end of the season. So that could be interesting as far as, how those last 5 games may or may not have a massive effect on what the, west side of the playoffs look like. So with that, let's try to just go month by month here, take a look at some of the games and, kind of what stands out. Obviously up there in October, first game of the season in LA at Crypto.com Arena versus the Los Angeles Kings. And then we have our home opener 2 days later against the Utah Mammoth. The Mammoth coming into their season the first time with that official name and logo. And then, like we made note of just a second ago, one of the 4 games against Dallas right out the gate, that third game of the season. So it'll be interesting to see how we shape up at home against Dallas. It'll be our second home game of the season. So very exciting for that as well. Moving down October a little bit, the 2 games against Boston that we'll play all year, 1 week apart, 1 home, 1 away. First one, obviously, at home, and then we're on the road in Boston and New Jersey. And then once again, too, those New Jersey games back-to-back as well, away for the first game against New Jersey, and then they hop on a plane right back with us and play us at home in Ball Arena. Nothing crazy in November, starting the month off against the Lightning, obviously a team that we've struggled with early in the season as well. Canucks and the Ducks and the Sabres at some point as well. And then later on, obviously facing a team like the San Jose Sharks, a little bit of a rematch with Alexander Georgiev, which is always very exciting. And at the top of November as well, I kind of breezed over this, is, playing Edmonton Oilers, which is a team that we have usually split the series with throughout the season. And, obviously playing against Connor McDavid, 2 of the best players in the league in Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon. That is always an electric matchup to watch. And then we get into December, a little bit of an East Coast road trip, play the Islanders, the Rangers, the Flyers, and the Predators respectively. And then we host the 2-time former Stanley Cup champions Florida Panthers in mid-December. And then we start, kind of that end of December into the new year where we have, the classic New Year's Eve in Denver, Colorado Ball Arena game, something that I like to attend with my family on a yearly basis. So much fun, such a great way to ring in the new year. This year we're playing the Blues. Last year it was against the Winnipeg Jets. We were able to take that win over the Jets on New Year's Eve, which was electric. And, the Blues, a team who thrived very well in the rest of the regular season last season, and also ended up making a pretty darn good push in the playoffs. Took the President's Trophy Winnipeg Jets to 7 games, so that'll be very electric. And then January, start things off against the Carolina Hurricanes. They have Nikolai Ehlers, who we talked a little bit about on this channel, how there was a potential that was going to be a landing spot for Colorado, was going to be a landing spot for Ehlers, that is, but he signed a long-term deal in Carolina. That is a team who has notoriously done very well in the regular season. They make a very strong push in the playoffs every year. So at this point in the season, that'll be an interesting game as well. And then we play the 2 Florida teams for the second and the last time. And then there's that 7-game homestand. In order, respectively, from first to last, we'll host Ottawa, Columbus, Toronto, Nashville, Washington, Anaheim, and Philadelphia. All 7 games at home in Denver, Colorado, across what looks like a 2.5-3 week standpoint. So that is going to be crucial to have all 7 of those games at home in Colorado. And then the classic Canadian road trip will go to Toronto, and then to Ottawa, and then to Montreal, and then we'll play against the Detroit Red Wings. And then this is when things get interesting. Like we talked about, February, only 1 away game, not very far either. Central Division matchup against the Utah Mammoth. We'll start February off 2 games at home against the Red Wings and the Sharks. And that's the final game of the Sharks of the season. And that one, as we said, at home in Denver, Colorado. And then after the almost 3-week, 20-day break for the Olympics, we will close things out with the 1 away game in Utah against the Mammoth. And then 2 more Central Division matchups against the Wild and the Blackhawks. Pretty typical games that is in March. If you see kind of at the bottom half of that, there's those 3 of 4 games against Winnipeg that are essentially all crammed within a 2-week base. We'll play them in the 2nd and the last week of March, both away at Winnipeg. And then it's back-to-back games for the 3rd and the 4th. But the last one comes home to Colorado. And that'll be the final of the 4 games that we play against the Winnipeg Jets. And then to close things off in April before the Stanley Cup playoffs, obviously, like we had talked about, a lot of Pacific Division matchups here. We play the Canucks on the 1st of April, Dallas Stars away in Dallas for the last time of the season. That Dallas Stars matchup, those 4 games, very spread out. Obviously, as the 3rd game of the season is against Dallas, and then one of the last games of the season is against Dallas. And of course, that's one of the day games as well, a 1 o'clock puck drop in American Airlines Center in Dallas. And then back-to-back games against St. Louis. And then there's those 5 Pacific matchups, the Flames, Knights, Oilers, Flames again, and Kraken, respectively, to close out the season for the Colorado Avalanche. So obviously a lot going on here, a lot to think about, a lot to break down. I think the most notable aspects of the season is that large homestand and, of course, the long break for the 2026 Winter Olympics. But just very exciting for the schedule to be out officially. And hopefully the Avs can continue their strength and have a really strong start with the roster that they're taking into this season. Let us know what you guys think of the Avs schedule, kind of what your thoughts are. If there's anything that sticks out to you about the schedule that, we didn't touch on here on the channel, but, very exciting that the schedule is officially out. And I think that a lot of the ways that the games are arranged and the way that things are going to work out, hopefully the Avs are going to be able to stand high at the Central Division and just in the Western Conference in general at the end of the season and find themselves a strong seeding and yet again, try to make a deep push in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in as usual. We appreciate your support. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.